Good afternoon and welcome to the Jeju Island. I would like to thank so much all of you for participating in this workshop. I see a lot of friends, old and new. I introduce new friends, Professor Ottinger, Professor Robinson, and Professor Casper. And it's great to be joined by the finest environmental thinkers in the world. Korea Environmental Law Association, established in 1977, is an academic society of legal scholars and lawyers in Korea. With its nearly 300 members, KELA is playing a leading role for development of environmental law and policy in Korea. This day is a historic day in KELA because as a number of IUCN, KELA proposed a very important motion titled as Management for Secondary Environmental Damage by Natural Disasters in WCC. Climate change poses a grave and growing danger to our people. This is not fiction, it is science. Climate change poses unacceptable risks to our security. As experienced in Fukushima accident, we have realized that natural disasters result in significant secondary environmental damages. This is a challenge before us. Now it falls to us. We need a new manner of thinking and action. This workshop is a good opportunity for us to explore and define practical ways and solutions on this issue. KELA proposed new legal system to response and management of the secondary environmental damages by the natural disasters. And KELA want to stay with this, over the long run. It's not quick and it's not easy. And the truth is there are some limits to what we can do. Although it's hard, we must do what is necessary, what is right. Giving up on our action means giving up our future. We make our one picture. I would like to close my speech by expressing my sincere wishes for the success of this workshop and for all participants to enjoy the conversation and the debate. I welcome and thank you again for making this possible. Thank you very much.
Well, now we move to the next stage. It's time for Professor Robinson to address the topic, IUCN and the environmental law. if I introduce CV of the Professor Robinson to you, I guess you spent almost whole time oriented for this workshop because he is a big figure in the field of environmental law. And actually, the professor intimidated me to have the chance to introduce Professor Robinson to you. So I was taken by the professor. So I'm very sorry about that. I don't have any chance to introduce Professor Nicholas Robinson. So please proceeding with the professor. So and you make a big introduction to the Professor Nicholas Robinson.
Thank you so much, my brother. Okay, let me confess, this is a really, really big honor for me to have a chance to introduce the Professor Nicholas Robinson. Because most of environmental lawyer, scholar, knowing is kind of big star in the environmental law field. I think let me introduce him as first, the university professor, Pace University. Most of you lost professor in law school and university. You know what is university professor? We are university professor, but actually that is totally different. Time to time, the trustee of the Pace University designated individual professors who have contributed significantly to scholarship in their fields and who are distinguished in their service to the university and their schools and discipline as university professor. I think this is better to record the university citation of the March 11th, 2009. Let me read this one. The trustee have conferred the position of university professor for the environment on Nicholas A. Robinson. He helped to establish the field of environmental law, both in the United States and abroad, and continue to build environmental law in nation around the earth through his scholarship and capacity building. As a university professor, he collaborates across the Pace University's faculties and environmental programs and lectures widely on behalf of the university. His research in how the law can advance climate change mitigation and adaptations cut across a number of disciplines. Climate change is quintessentially a global issue, and Professor Robinson's international and comparative environmental legal studies are a contribution that Pace University makes to our society. So impressive. So, moreover, he is distinguished professor of the Gilbert Sarah Distinguished Professor of Environmental Law, Pace University School of Law. And also he is the professor adjunct at Yale University School of the Forestry and Environment. And most of you know he's chair of the and founder IUCN Academy of the Environmental Law and chair of the IUCN Commission on Environmental Law. As someone said, we don't have enough time. Actually, too short is to introduce his publishing and academic works. But as a privilege of an introducer, let me express my personal feeling of Nicholas Robinson. I met him 13 years ago at Pace as a student and professor. And he opened my eyes to the new world, to the environmental law. When I was studying in Korea, we don't have environmental law. And when I got the education, I furthered my education in the United States, I got not only the PhD degree, SAD degree, I learned lots of insightful wisdom regarding the environmental ethics, the environmental stewardship from Nicholas Robinson, and also the technical and very practical issues regarding the environmental impact assessment. And I really like to thank you, Nicholas Robinson, and it's my really great pleasure to meet you again and how can I say? I would say, just God bless you. Thank you. Let me welcome to Professor Nicholas Robinson.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here. It's an even greater honor when one of your most outstanding students, who is now a professor, introduces you. So I'm very privileged indeed. All of us in the Environmental Law Commission of IUCN and for environmental law around the world have been very impressed at the extraordinary vision and support which the Republic of Korea has given to IUCN in hosting the World Conservation Congress. I think on behalf of everyone in IUCN, I should thank Korea, thank the Korean Environmental Law Association, and this is probably the most outstanding structure and format for this Congress that I have seen. The Congress gets bigger and larger and more complex every year, but we are grateful to Korea for hosting it. And it comes at a remarkable time in the history of IUCN because, as you know, climate change is affecting all nations on the earth, and we are coming to a point where we have to remake our legal principles, remake our patterns of behavior. What we have known as business as usual, the old past, is no longer something that can sustain us into the future. And it is the teachers and the thinkers about environmental law that are the people who will be the architects for this new kind of framework, this new kind of legal regime to help us cope in the coming years. I've been asked to give a short history of IUCN and environmental law to explain the background of how the Law Commission developed and where it is. And I will do that, as well as suggest to you the challenges which the Law Commission and our collaboration with the Korean Environmental Law Association and others must have for the future. IUCN has made a remarkable contribution to environmental law. When I first became involved with IUCN, we were just beginning to develop the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species, the Washington Convention of 1973. When I went to the Stockholm Conference on the Human Environment in 1972, the year before, IUCN had only about 30 lawyers involved with the Commission on Environmental Law. It has grown enormously since then. At this Congress, when it was held in 1986 in Costa Rica, the Commission on Environmental Law presented the draft of a new agreement, the Agreement for a Convention on Biodiversity. And all the people in Costa Rica at this Congress said, "You lawyers, you are dreamers. How could anyone think we could have a law on biodiversity? The lawyers don't understand it. The diplomats don't understand it. This is nonsense. But you can try. We will let you go try." And the result was, of course, through the work of the IUCN Environmental Law Program, the Convention on Biological Diversity was negotiated at the request of the General Assembly of the United Nations from 1990 to 1992 and was submitted for signature at the Earth Summit, the UN Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. The Convention on Biological Diversity then is one of the key cornerstones to our framework for reshaping conservation around the world. It's Cartagena Protocol and the Nagoya Protocol that have been developed under it. The concepts of ecosystem management that have been developed under it are beginning to shape a new way of thinking about society and nature. And now we have the question of ecosystem-based adaptation, EBA, a whole new elaboration of how are we going to help human and nature get through the coming decades of change of the planet. In 1948, when IUCN was first established, there was almost no environmental law. There was a little bit of law that had been developed at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 19th century for the management of forests and for the protection of fish and game, for the protection of animals. And already in the 1930s, the scientific community knew that we were in trouble. We did not have a good system for environmental protection, and animals were becoming extinct, plants were becoming extinct, and so a negotiation took place in cooperation with the League of Nations to create an international union for the protection of nature. But unfortunately, World War II came, and we lost all of that work. At the end of World War II, the conservationists in Switzerland was neutral in the war, had not been involved in the war. The conservationists in Switzerland had in their organization, which is now called Pro Natura, the Swiss League for the Conservation of Nature, they had all the records of the negotiations from before the war. And they brought together the parties to say, you really should pick this up again. The war has destroyed Europe, it's destroyed major parts of Asia. We must rebuild the world, but we cannot rebuild the world if we lose nature. And so they went to UNESCO. UNESCO was one of the new UN agencies that had just been created. And the conservationists said, UNESCO, you're for education, you're for culture, you're for science. You should protect nature. And UNESCO said, you're very nice people, but we are not for nature conservation. We are for important museums. We are for universities. You are something else altogether, but we like you. And so Huxley and others said in the General Conference of UNESCO meeting in Mexico City, shortly after it was established, we will have a workshop on what should we do about conservation of nature. And this workshop of scientists and diplomats reported to UNESCO's General Conference that yes, we make a scientific recommendation, we need a new international organization for nature. And the result was that the Republic of France, a sovereign state, the home of UNESCO in Paris, said we will convene a diplomatic conference in Fontainebleau, and we will prepare this recommendation into action. Some 17 nations came together, about 18 or 20 ministries, the Fish and Game Commissions, the Forest Commissions came, even when they didn't have a state sovereign member. And then the botanical gardens, the zoological societies, the nature protection societies, they too came. And so this very strange organization was created literally out of the ashes of the war in Europe. The International Union for the Protection of Nature was established, and it was composed of sovereign states, ministries without sovereign states, and NGOs, international and national non-governmental organizations. Today it would be almost impossible to achieve consensus that we should have such a hybrid organization. IUCN evolved over the years. At first it was a very small secretariat in Brussels in Belgium, one or two people. It then moved on to Switzerland, where the Canton of Vaud received it and said we will help this movement for a new international organization. And so IUCN came into being. The states were a little nervous about protection of nature alone. We should have sustainable use of nature. That meant we should conserve nature and therefore use some of nature, not just always protect it. And so the name was changed to IUCN, for the conservation of nature. And even in the first statutes in 1948, the preamble to the statutes of IUCN, which is the name of the treaty which constitutes this organization, the statutes say, one of the reasons we establish IUCN is to create a law for nature. a human law for nature. And in 1963, in the very beginning of the thinking about how to implement that, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature established its Commission on Legislation. It wasn't even working first on treaties. It wanted to develop the national laws that could effectively protect habitats, parks, and species. The Commission on Legislation began to develop a database, its first library. It collected the laws, and it began to assist nations in developing environmental law. There was a brilliant thinker in Paris at that time named Cyril de Clem. Cyril de Clem had been part of the family that left Russia after the Russian Revolution. They were what are known as white Russian immigrants in Paris. But he was an interpreter, he was a linguist. He provided for many years the team that translated